Hey, welcome back to another episode of Keep Standing. Grateful to have you sharing with us on today. Listen, before we get started, I need you to do me a big favor. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this content with others. If it's being a benefit to you, I know it's going to bless others. But I'm grateful to have you today. Today is an exciting one for me because I get a chance to sit down with somebody who I really care deeply about, and we've got a long history of sharing time together. He's an entrepreneur, one of the most well-respected voices when you talk about the intersection of business and social change. He's the founder of Phase 2 Consulting. He's advising Fortune 500 companies as well as faith leaders and nonprofits. He's also new to the authorship. He's just written a book entitled The Power to Persist. You got to make sure you pick that up as quickly as possible. He's also got a podcast too, The Power to Persist. You got to make sure you go also and subscribe to that as well. But even more than that, he's my Morehouse brother. We shared time together in seminary at Princeton, and he is a proud native of Chicago, Illinois, Southside to be exact. Excited to welcome Dr. Lamell McMorris.
My brother, how are you?
Man, I am fantastic today. I really am just really grateful to have you sharing with us today. Listen, we've been friends for a long time.
We have.
And man, we kid around a lot. But today was an exciting one for me because now I get to say publicly, man, over these years, I have always admired your work, your passion, your purpose.
Thank you.
And man, you got a compass dead set on purpose in life.
Yeah. Well, you're very kind. You know, we have a long history, and you're right. Not just as students together at Morehouse. I think you're 2 years old? 1 year. 1 year. Okay.
Year.
And then I followed you. You know, from Morehouse to Princeton Seminary. And so, I appreciate you saying that you admire what I've done, but, you know, we follow in folks' footsteps who we admire, and who've made an impression and who've paved the path. And you've done that for me. And so the proof is in the pudding. Yeah. If I'm following you, I mean, what do they say? Imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So that's what I've done.
I appreciate that. When we talk about imitation, let me see if I can imitate your golf game. I'll probably be a whole lot better if I can do that.
You know, depends on the day. Depends on the day you catch me. But I'm looking forward. Wish we could have gotten in today, but I'm looking forward to getting back on the golf course with you.
Yeah, well, listen, today we get a chance to talk about some of the things you're really passionate about. And I'm excited because got a chance to dig into this new book that you've written, Power to Persist. And I just want to jump right into some questions because you talk about this whole idea about shifting from chasing success to the pursuit of significance. Man, what was that moment like when your mindset just kind of shifted?
So it's gradual, right? I mean, you as an entrepreneur, I hope as an entrepreneur with purpose and impact, and the through line has always been advocacy. But I started off profit and, growth and all that, accolades and all that, and an interesting definition of success. And all that is good for a season. But then you get to a point, it's like, okay, this has been the first phase. Now I think I need to be working more towards significance. And part of it, Doc, is pivots come out of some doors being closed, and pivots arise out of, some tragedies, and sometimes out of loss. And I think a turning point for me was the loss of a part of my business that really, in this regard, put me in a different manner. Like, okay, maybe we need to go another. And by the way, as I try to put forth in the book, every pivot point came as a result of something, happening. So what may have looked to others on the outside as a door being closed, it actually was a door opening. Everything about starting my firm in 2002 in Washington, D.C. was about another door being closed down in Atlanta and an opportunity. And this pivot that you note from, just going and defining success around profit and growth of a business to actual significance came by virtue of an awareness of what others may have perceived to be a loss.
Yeah, so let's dive into that a little bit, because many people may not know your background with SCLC and your work with social change. I mean, that's always been a big part of who you are.
Yeah.
You work with Jesse Jackson, and then you did make this pivot towards, I think, more entrepreneurial or business oriented endeavors. Was that a major shift, or was that just a real kind of a natural collaboration?
So when I traveled with Reverend Jackson, you may recall, what at one point what Reggie Love was to Obama, like the body guy. That's what I was with Reverend Jackson. And so when you travel with these principles, they kind of give the same speeches, Doc, over and over and over. And so, I'm traveling around the world and the country with Reverend Jackson, and he gives this speech over and over about comparing the civil rights movement to a symphony. And his contention was we were in the fourth movement of the symphony, and that was for economic parity, access to capital, right? We have the right to vote. We can go to whatever schools we want to. We have access and accommodations around housing and education. And so I really took that seriously. And so I never forgot that. So even when I transitioned from working with Reverend Jackson and at 27 years old, was appointed by Martin Luther King III to be the executive director and chief operating officer of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the organization his dad started at the height of the civil rights movement. When that opportunity was shuttered, I never forgot what Reverend Jackson said. And so I may have thought that I was on this trajectory to be sitting in Dr. King's office. I'm having worked for Reverend Jackson, I may have thought I was about to be the next, civil rights and social justice leader. But it really resonated to me that, if this last movement that we're on is access to capital and business, how can I then combine my calling to impact, to advocacy with a business endeavor? It was actually Houston's own Rodney Ellis that told me you can do good and make money at the same time. When I was traveling with Reverend Jackson, I never forgot that. And so I said, okay, I think I can start a business and still be true, be a bridge, impact communities, still be a servant, still be an advocate. And that's what I've attempted to do.
A lot of leaders who maybe on the path that you were on at that time, we all think that we've got it figured out, this, at this point, and then God says, okay, let me throw you this little curveball here. Yeah. This is what I want you to do. But not everybody can receive that shift that happens in our lives, that there are many leaders who may be, God may be moving them in that path and they miss it. What do you think is it that, may cause us to miss? Is it, just the lack of being able to deal with unfamiliarity or, always wanting familiarity in our life?
Well, so again, I talk about some of this, I hope, in the book around some of the 8 habits that I raise. When you are being bent or when life throws you a curveball, it's really how you look at it, right? And how you internalize that. Is this something that is going to keep me down or inhibit me? Or is there a lesson here that allows me to continue to persist and propel and go forward? I think if more leaders started out first with what I talk about, attitude of gratitude, a gratitude journal, I think well, where has God brought me this far? And so if I can be thankful and acknowledge where God has brought me up until this point, then it's not hard for me to realize, okay, if I've made it this far, then yeah, I may have gotten a, curveball thrown here. Yeah, I may have got, but that means if I stay focused and reflect on where I've been, then surely, and it literally was, when I was fired from SCLC, this is kind of when Google first started. And yeah, I was depressed. I was down for a while, but there came a day. I said, I want to Google myself. I want to see, and it said 27-year-old fired, 27-year-old removed, 27-year-old handpicked. And it was at that point, Doc, that I said, there's no way, right? Exactly to what I just talked about. I did it myself. There's no way that God has given me all this exposure, all these opportunities, all this experience for this to be the final story. And when I did that realization, that's when I went into, what am I going to do next? What am I being led to do? And that's how I started my business.
Well, your story is phenomenal. When you find out all the things you've accomplished now, it's unending. And I know that there's this next chapter happening as well. When you talk about these 8 essential habits in your book,
yes.
And there's always one that we say, man, there's a lot of leaders that are just missing that one. Which one of those do you think leaders are ignoring that's costing them the most right now?
So I have to say the one that I'm still struggling with, and I struggle with every day, and that's probably vulnerability. For a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Vulnerability historically has been interpreted as weak. Vulnerability has had a meaning that you're now exposing yourself to folks who may do harm. You're leaving yourself wide open and kind of exposed. When in fact, all of those things are actually, Doc, constraining. I think when leaders, those who lead like you do, teams of individuals, a church and individuals, members of our family, I found that when we can admit to people that, today I'm not feeling good. Team, I'm struggling. I don't have the answer. It's actually not constraining. It's actually liberating. It actually opens up the doors of possibilities rather than closing them. We find that people come towards us rather than push away. And by your being vulnerable to your team, to your family, to the folks you work with, it then allows them to be vulnerable. And so this notion, and listen, we're called to lead, right? You're supposed to be the leader. You're supposed to have all the answers. Folks are looking up to you. Folks are, right? But part of being a leader is demonstrating a bit of vulnerability. That, I too am human. I too hurt. I too struggle. That is a remarkable opportunity for, and trust me, bro, it's one that I struggle with. If there is one of the habits that I struggle with the most that I put forward, but I assure you and your listeners, it's the one that has probably the most opportunity in it. It's this notion of vulnerability.
I think we all have. You got these old templates that, hey, you don't show this. This is a sign of weakness. You don't cry. You don't show emotion. You protect these
especially
areas.
As men. We didn't get to the gender dynamics, and then as Black men, right? It's a lot.
That's a whole nother conversation when you talk about weathering that Black men go through, and then trying to deal with this old template when. Then you stumble upon these moments where you recognize, if I am vulnerable, look how many people are saying, if he can be vulnerable or she can be vulnerable, then I can too.
That's right.
It's
freedom.
I found that out, having to admit, hey man, I'm struggling. Mike and I talk about this. Warren, good friend of ours. When you start talking about leaders and their their mental health.
Yeah.
And you're able to say, hey man, you know, this ain't always as easy as you think.
Yeah.
Other people saying, for real, you too.
Oh yeah. Because, you know, I can only imagine, right? You and Warren and my dear longtime Chicagoan who's based now in Houston, Cosby, right? People look up to you, but there's also an element of a pedestal.
Yeah.
And so there's a part of it where, you know, folks, they want to keep you up there, and you have to be careful who knocks you down from that pedestal too. But I submit that there's strength, there's power, there's freedom in our opening up ourselves to each other.
And I think there's always going to be a level of discernment that you have to use.
Yes.
But I have found that when you meet a moment where you can be intentionally vulnerable, man, it has so much transformative power in it, more than you ever imagined. And but I'm grateful for that, for those spaces, those safe spaces where you can do that. Listen, you've been in, I mean, places with, I mean, the most powerful in our country, leaders. But what people may not know is, man, you are so, I mean, locked down when we talk about Southside, Chicago.
Oh, without a doubt.
And the work that you do there, you know, with your company. What keeps you so grounded?
So, you know, that's actually a great word, grounded. Part of my why for keeping my hand and tentacle engaged in the place where I'm from is because it is that reminder that I talked about earlier. It is that sense of gratitude. I probably went through a phase of my life where I did not appreciate the importance of where I was from to who I ultimately become and am becoming. I probably didn't. But life has a way of bringing things full circle and crystallizing. And yeah, you know, I lean back in because my neighborhood, my community, my family has given so much to me, and not even like tangible stuff. Everybody thinks, you know, we have to deal in these things all the time that we can quantify and touch, but it's really a lot, Doc, about the intangibles, some of the instincts, just from having grown up, how I grew up and where I'm from, how they come into play in certain business and social settings. That stuff is important. And so, you know, I really do believe that I've been given enough that I at least should drop a pebble in my neighborhood and in my community and try to figure out how to be a part of, you know, catalyzing growth and development and helping folks.
You've done more than just a little. So, man, tell us a little bit about the work that you've done going back, redeveloping your whole community where you grew up.
So I'm definitely a part of, I hope, a larger effort to redevelop communities like mine, right? So back in 2016, I was back home. We still have our childhood home and building where I grew up on the Southside in Woodlawn, and I stood on the porch of my childhood home, and I looked out and I saw some of the same vacant lots and blighted buildings. And, you know, I define an entrepreneur, Doc, as somebody that goes on top of this building, jumps off and figures out what's going to happen on the way down. I didn't know anything about real estate, but I did know about this historic practice called redlining. And I knew that some element of this historic practice of discrimination and non-inclusion of my communities and communities like it in, you know, loans, development, resources, mortgages, et cetera, is a contributing factor to why my community still looks like it is today. And so in 2016, I decided where they drew red lines, I was going to attempt to draw greenlining. So I launched Greenlining Realty USA to try to spur investment primarily around real estate initially in underserved communities. And I started with my block. I figured if I'm going to start anywhere, I need to start in the place where I was birthed. And so, you know, able to build homes on vacant lots, that I believe has catalyzed some other development, right? When you drop a ripple, I try to tell people, like, don't think you have to go back and rebuild the whole neighborhood. Just grab a blighted property, a vacant lot, and I assure you, if you start, some other people are gonna follow you, and I think that's what's happening. So now I'm excited about a similar project in Birmingham that we're launching, and I hope to come here to Houston and partner with you on a housing project, and let's, because there are underserved communities all around the country. And I named it Greenlining Realty USA, not just Greenlining Realty Chicago for a reason. And so I'm excited about the potential of that.
When you can see something that needs attention, and then you recognize I've got a few tools in this box that can help, then I love the way you describe it. Jump off a building and let's figure it out on the way down.
Let's do it.
Yeah, just do it. Yeah. So listen, people, here's the interesting thing. We know social media today is just kind of taking over everything. People can look at social media and look at people, and then on the outside they think, oh man, they got all the accoutrements of success. It looks like it from the outside, but the truth is that that's all a part of the facade. On the inside, there's this void, there's this emptiness, and more than likely, there's this disconnect from purpose. But you found your purpose. This is something you're still, I would assume, chasing after, trying to make sure that I get everything out the bucket in the time that's afforded. For somebody who's looking and saying, I want to find that purpose pattern that Dr. McMorris has, what would you say? Hey man, this is a small shift, sis. This is a small shift you can make just right here that gets you towards that.
I try to ask. I was with some of our younger men of Morehouse a couple of weeks ago, and I tried to share with them that the line from my childhood on the Southside of Chicago to where we sit, right? It's not a straight line, but it's a line. And what I would submit to you and your listeners is for everyone to just identify what that line is. There's something that you've been passionate about. There's something that has caught your attention. There's something that you've been doing. There's something that you would wake up and probably do for free if you could. And I would lean into that. I would try to figure out all the opportunities I could to expand that. I would reach out to people. I talk about in the book, your network is your net worth. Networking can be cursory. You and I see each other, we exchange it. But when I talk about networking, I talk about it in the sense of relationship cultivation. When I first sat down here, the first question you asked me was, how was my mom doing? Yeah. You didn't ask how my team, how much revenue I had. That's networking gone to where it needs to go. But it's hard work. It's hard work staying in touch all these years. Yeah. It's hard work. But I submit that, in addition to one of the ways to find your line and find what you've been called to is to reach out and grab on to mentors. Reach out and expand your network. Do the hard work of reaching out to people on LinkedIn and every social media platform that you look up to as many times as you have to. Those are some of the small steps that anyone can take. But you can't, don't think, just because I reach out to Dr. Sloan, he's just going to reach out to me. No. You got to put in, I told the young men at Morehouse a couple of weeks ago, I said, look, here's my number, my email, here's my promise. If you reach for me, I'll reach back.
So
now, how many reached?
Yeah.
How many reached? It was 1,500 young men in that auditorium. I've been in touch with probably 8 to 10 consistently.
Because they assume you're too busy, oftentimes, or may not recognize the gravity of the moment and who they have access to. If I could go back and tell my 18 to 20-year-old self, anything I say, go back and ask more questions, especially in that space.
Be curious.
Be curious. Absolutely. I tell my daughter that, who's at Spelman now, ask questions.
Absolutely.
So that's where I want to lean in here is I know Lamell McMorris. I'm going to go there and tell, my young men at Morehouse, you got something big here. Ask him. And we want to pour back into the next generation.
Yeah.
If you're talking to that that young person or that young leader, that young entrepreneur, social change agent, and they've got you, what would you say the one question you need to ask me that might open up something for you that I wouldn't mind talking about? What would it be?
You know, that's a wonderful question.
I don't want to give the trade away. I didn't want to secret away because you're going to get all these DMs.
No. That's the wonderful question. And I think it's the question that birthed this book, The Power to Persist. How do you keep going? And why do you keep going? And that's what birthed, you know, this notion of persistence and these resilient habits.
Listen, man, that made me feel some kind of way because you know you are a preacher. Most people don't know that, man. You're a preacher. But yeah, listen, ask questions.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
Ask questions.
Yeah, we want to pour back in.
Oh, yeah.
To this next generation.
We feel an obligation to.
Major.
Yeah.
Major. Well, listen, you got some stuff, you know, out there. Tell us, you know, about the book and then how we can reach you.
Absolutely. The book is The Power to Persist. It is available everywhere where books are sold. The podcast, The Power to Persist podcast, available everywhere where you listen to podcasts. And especially continue on this journey with us at www.lamellmcmorris.com. They told me I'm old school if I say www.
I know, right?
I'm supposed to just say lamellmcmorris.com, but I can't help it. I'm getting old.
The same.
Visit me at lamellmcmorris.com. Let's persist together.
Yeah. Man, listen again. I thank you so much. I think we're going to run it back around the block again in a minute, but thanks so much, bro.
Thanks for having me.
Love you dearly, man.
Love you too, brother.
Thanks so much for joining us. Again, until next time, keep standing.